Hello. I think I'm not muted or anything. I'm here. Is anybody here on the. Oh, hello, Palm Dad. Well, I got my answer. Right off the bat, I'm gonna make the game quieter. Because I'm gonna start with the main. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The remote control just went. Can hear you. Alright, that's good. So, as you might have or you might have not heard, today has actually been a very, very intense day. A conference called. Actually, I'm just gonna. Sorry, I'm just gonna show it. One moment. I'm just gonna. Take the thing, provided I didn't leave it behind. I'm just gonna read it out to you. One moment. Hello, LOL. I'm back. Hello. I think LOL is new to the stream. I don't think I've ever seen LOL here. So I'm just gonna do the best thing that I can. I'm just gonna link the page so you can join it. So today has been the first day of the conference. Benai Brit Pauline. And we're not gonna be focusing on the Benai Brit Pauline a lot. Let's just say that it was an organization of volunteers that whose goal was to make people's lives better. We really, that's right, New Giggler. We don't need to focus on the organization itself because the main focus on the whole conference was, of course, the Shoah, which is how Jewish people called the Holocaust, and a broader topic of genocide. Unfortunately, the conference organizers did not allow me to record anything, and even more strangely, the organizers themselves did not create any sort of recording of the event, which means that if you weren't there live, then you won't be able to listen to any of the speeches ever again. But I did my best to take notes of the more relevant speeches, and we're gonna discuss some things. We're gonna discuss some things since I actually feel I've learned quite a lot, and I've actually got pretty good news. A lot of the speakers were historians, journalists. So instead of crying over not being able to record any of the event, I'm just going to get one-on-one interviews with the speakers themselves, and some of them basically already agreed to it. So that is a great that's great news for us. So today the conference started, and if I sound low energy, then it's because I'm actually quite tired. It was like a rapid fire of lectures today. So today we started at, the conference name was Wasted Lessons of the Holocaust. So it started with the speeches. Like here you've got the whole plan of today. I'm gonna make myself full screen. This is the plan of today basically. It ended at 4ish p.m. 4:30 p.m. But it all got sort of moved, so it ended later. And it started with well, we can just consort the plan. It started with okay, it just started with a few speeches. Some of them I liked, some of them I didn't like. I did not very much like the rhetoric of, because an ambassador from Israel was invited, and their rhetoric was basically just talking about how a strong Israel is needed, and I'm not really a fan. And we had the classic conflation of anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, which also I'm not a big fan of. So that was a bit of an iffy part of the whole thing. But don't worry, it was just all around good from there. So it started basically by an address by Marian Turski, the Auschwitz survivor. Unfortunately, Marian Turski could not be here, well, there, live in Pauline, but he has left us a recording of his speech, right? And so I have made notes of what he has said. So yes, Marian Turski basically, I'm gonna try to decipher my notes because I was writing very quickly because the speakers were speaking quite quickly, and I was like, So, survivor plus, I don't know what I wrote here, opinion. Have people learned from the Holocaust? And here Marian Turski's opinion was, I would like to be an optimist and say, yes. If we all remember the year 1938, Chamberlain, which is interesting because many people in debates have been talking about this lately, like Anastasia has been giving this example a lot lately when she speaks. If we all remember 1938, Chamberlain, and when he did the Czechoslovakia thing, he returned home and I said, I brought you peace. And Churchill said, you could have chosen shame or war, and now you've chosen shame, and now you're gonna have war. So Marian Turski has made this pretty powerful argument, and I really wonder what you think of it as an argument that we have actually learned something from the Holocaust. What if the US, what if Joe Biden, those were the exact words of Marian Turski, what if Joe Biden decided to do a similar deal with Russia? Right? What if Joe Biden would decide that for the sake of peace, the best deal will be to just hand over Ukraine to Russia, and Joe Biden would come and be like, I have brought you peace. Imagine that. Think about that sort of scenario. Which, what Marian Turski was trying to say is that this time we have chosen like a different path, a different choice from back then. We have actually chosen to not appease, but rather to, well, support the country that is being aggressed upon. Why was the European Union built? Is the second argument. I have actually written about it either on the President Sunday server or in DMs with someone. Why was the European Union built? It was in order to avoid war, conflict, and, well, differences. And basically it says that thanks to the EU many conflicts have been avoided, that it was an organization that was built based on the lessons of the Shoah, and that, for example, that Hungary and Romania would have probably still been in conflict if it wasn't for the European Union. So this is, again, is a nice example of the positives that have happened ever since the Shoah. And this is an excellent point, a very interesting one, that in Poland, Hungary, and Bulgaria and Romania, you have seen this rise, a wave of the right wing, while the country that used to be Nazi Germany has actually changed to be an extremely democratic country. Hello, Maya Major. So this was also like a very big positive as a lesson from the Shoah, that sort of the country that has actually perpetuated the genocide has changed so much in a positive direction, which I think is a legitimate thing to say, right? And then the Holocaust has inspired European ideas, theology, art, literature. Hello, Lucy. First time here. I've seen you before chatting with Demon Woman. I'm happy to see you on stream. Also, I've been pronouncing your last name in my head as Hayes this whole time because I never heard you say it before. Yeah, it's Hazeh, but it's okay. It's like with Vosh and Vaush, you know? Maybe that is just the fate of Polish streamers, that your name is, how you say, that how your name is pronounced is a choice, I guess, you know? You can say Hazeh, you can say Hayes, and I'm probably not gonna be mad about it. At this point, it's just a choice, you know? It will speak to what your personality is, like a horoscope. It's just my American brain trying to pronounce things. I think that's, in this case, I think it's pretty fair to read it Hayes automatically. I think in this case it's pretty fair. I sort of created the name, or rather the surname, without thinking about it. You know, did you just arrive, or do you know what we're doing? We're doing a recap of the conference that I was in today about the Holocaust, about genocide, about the wasted lessons of the Shoah, because Shoah is what Jewish people call the Holocaust, and many, many other things. There was a big part about Ukraine today. If you're interested about Ukraine, then this will for sure be interesting for you, this recap. If you're interested about the Polish-Belarusian border crisis or wider um, problem that immigrants face, or rather refugees, I should say, then this should also be interesting for you. And if you're interested in the Loner Box um, genocide debates, starting with poly people, ending with me, then I might have a really interesting twist for you. The new paradigm that potentially could end this whole topic and satisfy basically Loner Box's needs. Make the both groups happy. I have a solution that will make both groups happy. And I'm sort of doubt that Loner Box will not accept this sort of thing that I have learned on the conference. So look forward to that because it's one of the later lectures. How does that sound? How does that plan sort of sound to you as the audience, as the Giggler squad? What do you think? Hello, good for Gaby. Hello, hello. So how does the plan sound? I like it. All right. So we continue then. So Marian Turski continued to say, as a historian, because of course most speakers were historians today, journalists, I find Marian Turski to be a very interesting person because he is a historian, so he, his the education, but also he is an Auschwitz-Birkenau survivor. So he has the perspective of a historian, but he also has the personal lived experience of surviving the death camp. So it's like he's definitely a person that I would love to be able to speak one-on-one and upload the interview for your viewing. So he says, as a historian, I am also a bit of a pessimist as well. Also, I'm pretty sure because yesterday was Marian Turski's birthday and he's like 97 now, I believe. So I must say that for a person that is 97, he is like in excellent shape, at least when it comes to mental prowess. I have to say excellent shape. To be given speeches, traveling from country to country, pretty nice. At the age of 97. So, this is very interesting part of Turski's speech because there was a lot of talking of needing strong Israel at the beginning by the ambassador of Israel. And what Marian Turski said was that he pleaded, I want to suggest that people read the Bible, the Torah, and don't spoil the great gift of building a state after 2,000 years. And he added, I am very proud of the people that are protesting in Israel right now. I am one of you. You probably are familiar with the protests in Israel, right? That people started just protesting against the shenanigans of the pretty far-right government in Israel, which I have to say I saw as a pretty good sign of things moving in a better direction. And I really appreciated that Marian Turski said, I'm really proud of those who protest in Israel, and I am one of you. I am one of those who protest, as in, he said, I am one of you protesters. So that was a part of the speech that I really liked and I really appreciated. We're not gonna be going through the history of the organization who had a 100th anniversary. It's not really all that important. I guess as a little bit of trivia, I can tell you that the second biggest um, branch of the organization was located in Lviv, and it was called Leopolis, which is a very cool name, Leopolis. So we move to the next speaker by Kostek. The next speech is by the person who wrote the book Final Solutions, Genociders and Their Work. We had the pleasure of hearing him speak, and he spoke of 4, because you probably are familiar. Oh yeah, that's true. That's because I'm a big Prison Sunday orbiter, I guess, you know? So it is my duty to have many books, because I have to read a lot more. It is also my duty to read a lot more books. So yes, it's okay. After the Shoah, there is this big sort of call or slogan, never again. And here, the speaker has said that actually it's not just one never again, it's several. Never again be a victim. Never again become a perpetrator. Never again be a bystander. And I think here is never again be a culprit. Right? It's more than just one. The meaning of never again is more than just one, if that makes sense. And he says, the never again concept has failed, according to the author of the book Final Solutions. And then, which is very interesting, it gets into all those needy, greedy things that we often discuss when we debate other topics, which I think you will appreciate. He says, we need to define and understand genocide if we are really to live by the principle of never again. If we do not know what a genocide is, then we cannot even start. And the defining of genocide was started by a few very interesting statements. First of all, I think it's about here. Yes, it's further. Genocide is not an existing an existing fact of the world, right? It is an intellectual construct. Genocide is not an objective fact of the world. It is not something that exists in an objective manner. It is an intellectual construct. Depending on definition, we will call mass killing as genocide or not. Those were the two things that the speaker has said. So basically, it's a social construct, and we decide on what fits our understanding of genocide and what does not fit our understanding of genocide. Which is interesting because after each speech, there was an opportunity to ask a question, and I did ask the question that everybody in the audience probably wanted me to ask. So that's a good thing, in my opinion. Boom. Let's go further. And for example, while we are on the topic, yes, Lucy Cyber is superior to present Sundays. And the saddest thing is that the camera does not really showcase the whole thing. But to be fair to President Sunday, the library that I have here is sort of multi-generational library. Like it has books that my grandfather collected, it has books that my father collected, so it's sort of like a bigger collection. Oh, it's going pretty well, thank you. Okay. We will get to Loner, don't worry. We will get to Loner because I have the solution to the whole Loner box debate, okay? I have the perfect solution, and it has been gifted to me today during the conference by a very energetic and amazing speaker. So look forward to that because the solution is coming, okay? And you will be pleased with it. It is such an elegant thing that I'm really shocked that I have not thought of it before, okay? It is perfect. It is good for people that didn't agree with Lonerbox, and it is good for Lonerbox who didn't agree with people like me and okay? Oh, Wolfgar, you should watch my talk with Lonerbox. It happened it happened not so long ago. It was quite nice. And now I've got the perfect solution for everybody to be happy. So again, look forward to that. So since we are the people who decide what is a Holocaust and what is not, there are many problems that come with it. There are many problems that go with it. For example, I'm pretty sure. Oh, nice, Stellars. I'm pretty sure you have heard of an event called the Armenian Genocide. Who here has heard of the Armenian Genocide? Who here has heard of the Armenian Genocide? And do you believe it was a genocide? I guess those are the two questions. Okay. So as the speaker have pointed out, Armenians are not even able to force the perpetrators of their own genocide to sort of agree, admit, to come to terms with what they've done, right? And the Armenian government has just lately announced that it will stop trying to make Turkey admit to the genocide. Like, let that sink in. And it's pretty sadly, the speaker continued to say, he continued by saying, the Armenians depend on the goodwill of the country that has done. The Armenians depend on the goodwill of their bigger genocidal neighbors for them to have the enough goodwill to out on their own just allow the teaching of the genocide. And of course, and this is very interesting, that came up later during the speeches, the indoctrination of Turkey was so big, it was so prevalent that, and that is something that I found really, really interesting. Turkey influenced the narrative about the Armenian genocide so much that, thankfully, in a niche parts, but it still managed to become a debate on whether or not it was a genocide. There are certain people that try to say that it was a mutual conflict, that it wasn't a genocide of Armenian people, but it was just a mutual conflict, and that you should be able to look at both sides and not judge. So this is where we sort of are when it comes to the Armenian. Isn't that interesting? Don't judge. It was a conflict between those two groups, and we should just listen to the other side's argument and not judge. Lemkin, who formulated the word of genocide and a legal framework, had been started to think of the necessary due to Armenian genocide. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. Thankfully, the speaker said that the majority of academics agree that it was a genocide, and that the people that try to do the whole think of both sides are actually in the minority. So I'm glad to have been sort of calmed down this way, but the very fact that it became a debate at all is a testament to how Turkey has sort of manipulated the discourse. This is the same argument about Sri Lanka's Tamil genocide. You will hear it coined as a civil war. Right, yeah. And now we enter, because the main topic was the Shoah, the Holocaust, right? And the speaker continues. The Holocaust has become a huge political success when it comes to genocide. It can be called a political success, which is a pretty interesting way to look at it, but it is actually factually true. The Holocaust has become a big political success. Victims are usually powerless, and Jewish people are an exception to that rule, because the Holocaust or the Shoah has become such a universal symbol of suffering, such a universally accepted thing, such a broadly accepted thing, that Jewish people have received a moral mandate to sort of to have power, so to speak, if that makes sense. And in that sense, the Shah was a big political success. Of course, for a thing like this to become a political success, people must first be victims of genocide, which is another thing, right? And then this might seem like it's all over the place, because I'm basically giving a recap of what was said during the speeches, and I'm also talking from my notes. So I've got a question for you now. How many definitions of genocide do you think there are in the academic discourse? Don't look it up. Just give me a number. Give me a number. Give me any number. How many? How many do you think? How many definitions of genocide are there in academic circles? I'm gonna wait for you to give me 4. I've got a 4. I've got a 15. In academia only, I'm gonna suggest 10. Dozens. So, the answer is there are 50 definitions of genocide in academic literature. There are 50 definitions of genocide in academic literature. And of course, there's only one in law. There's only one in law. 50, yeah. So Karasu was correct. Because Karasu is usually correct. Actually, I'm not even sure if Karasu was ever incorrect, so maybe I should just say always correct. Yeah, almost as many scholars tackling the question. UN law, yeah, exactly. We have one UN law definition created by Lemkin. And the speakers has said that there is a difference between a genocide and a massacre, right? And this is something that I've never heard before. So this is a difference that I have never heard before. Well, first of all, the speaker has said if you remove massacres from human history, then not much of human history remains, which is a little bit of a sad statement to make, but he made it. And the biggest, okay, what do you think? I'm going to allow the audience to sort of give their guesses. What do you think the difference between a massacre and a genocide would be? What is the difference between a genocide and a massacre? The way it was described by the speaker was very interesting. And I think some of you might not have heard this distinction before. So I'm very happy to discuss it a bit with you. But first, I guess massacre is physically killing many people as opposed to something like a cultural genocide. More local versus broader. Actually, there is like the main... I'm going to explain it in a second. The number of people killed. Time span massacre is shorter. So I think you might be interested in what the speaker had to say. I don't even think that those answers are incorrect because I don't think there's just one correct answer. So I think that the answers that you've given can be discussed, and I don't think they are incorrect per se, but the relationship to the people who perpetrated it. Okay, so, and this is a thing that is very interesting. He said that many people, perspective-wise, I mean. So he said that many people enjoy the act of killing, enjoy the act of torturing, enjoy the act of rape. And that usually, for example, when a city was captured after a siege, there will be a time of killing, raping, and massacring. And that usually people, after a while, will just get tired of it. And that they will say, oh, those people survived, whatever, they can live, right? And that when it comes to genocide, A genocide is the killing of others to make them cease to be. And he expanded on it by saying, for people that commit a massacre, the pleasure is the act of committing the massacre itself. Right? That's the pleasure that the perpetrators derive from the process. But for the people who are committing a genocide, the pleasure is not the act itself. The pleasure is their imagined better world without the group that they want to get rid of. Does that make sense? For them, the act of the killing or getting rid of is not the pleasure itself. It is the imagined future of a world without that group existing. And he gave an example of soldiers in Germany that would say, I don't really, enjoy killing those people, those old women in the forests. It's always a dirty business. Brains get splattered all over me. There are no proper showers in here. It's an unpleasant thing, but someone has to do it. I suppose so, yeah. I suppose so. I suppose so. Partly, yeah. About imagining the world without the group, right? The perpetrators of genocide don't enjoy the killings. They enjoy the vision of the better world without the group that's being removed. Yeah, you can, that's right, yeah. It's about the outcome that you want. It's about it's about this difference in perspective. When you do a massacre, you just want to kill and pillage until you're satisfied. But when you're doing a genocide, you want the group gone, and you don't have to even enjoy it. You do enjoy the vision of what comes after. Yes, the danger of genocide is one stop of the act of massacre, and people who might not destroy that massacre might also join. Yes, correct, yeah. It could, yeah, of course. Of course. Absolutely, it could. Desire to cause terror versus elimination. Yes, that's right. And then the speaker continued the topic to say, is it possible to compare the Shoah with anything else? Is it possible to compare the Holocaust to any other genocide? Do you think it's possible? I hope I'm not being annoying with not just saying the notes and with, trying to make this more conversational. Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like Vikings versus Nazis, yeah. I just hope that the questioning of the audience is not annoying. Do you think the Shoah can be compared with anything else? And I also found the speaker's response to be very interesting, which is great because this particular speaker has already agreed to speak to me to do an interview. But he says that he has a lot of university work right now. So after the super busy period is done, I'll be able to land an interview. So that will be amazing. So I'm gonna pour myself some Pepsi. I'm gonna wait for your response. Can the Shoah be compared with anything else? Good. You could draw comparisons, but the scale is unimaginable. That is true. That the scale is pretty big. I like the answer of the speaker. I really like it. Of course, I repeat that when I say Shoah, I mean the Holocaust. Can the Holocaust, the Shoah, be compared to any other genocide? What do you think the answer is? I really like the answer of the speaker. I will mention that the speaker that I'm talking about now is both a historian and a journalist. Native Americans. So I guess your answer is you can. So the answer the speaker gave is existentially it is understandable not to want to compare the Shoah to anything else, right? But morally and intellectually it is unacceptable. It is existentially understandable not to want to do it, but it is morally and intellectually unacceptable. Interesting. Yeah, this is a very, very good author. I have presented, on the last stream, I have presented his book, The Last Solutions, Genociders and Their Work. That is the author of that book that was speaking today. And here's a note that I make. No longer is the Shoah unique. It was unprecedented. We need to compare because it still threatens us. Unacceptable not to compare. It is existentially understandable why people would not want to do it, but it is morally and intellectually unacceptable not to do so. Right? Existentially understandable. And there's a Yehuda Bauer, a quote by Yehuda Bauer, no longer is the Shoah unique. It was unprecedented, but we need to compare. It still threatens us. The Shoah still threatens us. Right? And also the speaker, because as I read the notes, as I see your comments, the things that the speaker said sort of come back to me as well. That if we do not compare the Shoah to anything, if we do not do it, then it itself becomes, it itself loses all of its power. It becomes excluded from the discourse altogether. If we would just not compare it and say that it's its own thing that is unlike anything else. So that is like and the question arises, Isn't there a risk of trivializing? You might want to dismiss the Shoah because of how extraordinary it was. And then we enter one of the other most interesting things that I have heard during the speech. I have heard actually a lot of things that I have not considered before during the lectures, and there was a lot of it. It was jam-packed. But if anyone do a series, it became a past relic of fetishized object of one kind, and no longer we understand the people's loss itself. Exactly. That is actually what the speaker said, that if we do not compare the Shoah to other things, then we lose the ability to understand any of it. But here he says, he comes back to the fact that the Shoah, the Holocaust, was a political success, but there is a price to the political success. There is a price to the political success of the Shoah. Can you guess what the price is? I will give you a little bit of a hint. It is the price for the Jewish people. There is a price to the Jewish people of the Shoah being a political success. We're having a very intense stream today, and I have a lot to say yet. I'm actually glad that I'm not flopping this. My notes are better than I thought, although I must learn to take better notes. So the relating of the different events keeps them from being related to just histories that have passed. Yeah, but also it allows the Shoah not to be just an isolated thing, a special thing that is, because it just robs us of understanding. Is it buffering? It should not be buffering. It should be okay. So, what do you think is the price to pay for the success of the Shoah, political success? What is the I guess the price is that it enables further hate because of the dehumanization. The price is a little bit different than what you might think. Never again can be a phrase to dismiss other attempts at genocide. It needs to be reminded of something like the Holocaust can easily happen again if aren't willing to actively fight against hate. So, I will talk later about the importance of good memorials in Budapest or Berlin. So, what do you think the price is? Anyone else? What do you think the price of the political success of the Shoah is? And this is going to be a pretty interesting thing because it becomes a very interesting discussion on its own. There were a lot of interesting things said on the it wasn't a panel, it was a conference. So what do you think? I'm gonna give you like a minute or two. No one? Okay, I'm just gonna jump into it then. The price of the political success. Political success somehow leads to rise of anti-Semitism. I would also guess the price is the erasure of enormous amount of cultural knowledge. Maybe I'm thinking too simply. Thanks, the site works better than the app for me. Oh. Right. So, the price of the success of Shoah is that the memory of the Shoah is no longer Jewish. Does that make sense? It became a universal metaphor for suffering. It is not a purely Jewish experience anymore. It became a universal experience. And with that come certain negative aspects of it. Interestingly enough, someone said before, someone actually did the comparison to the Native Americans, and there was a Native American comparison does actually come up. So there was a famous writer who said the Holocaust was done by people to people, and it was written out of good intention. It was sort of fighting against the dehumanization of Jewish people, that they were people. And a person has said later, years later, it was done to Jewish people. The Jewishness was the central thing to the Holocaust, to the deed. Right? The Jewishness was the central element to the Shoah. And for stories to become universal, groups that are affected by it have to lose control of the story. And here is: nobody asks the Native Americans of their opinion. The Native Americans are not really in control of the story and how it's depicted in things like westerns and other type of media. And the speaker makes an argument that media about the Holocaust are basically treated in a similar way as westerns are in that regard. And he gave examples of movies like The Diary of Anne Frank and others, that there are no aspects of Jewishness of the characters being really presented or put forward, like that the people are just like everyone, simply human, but in effect they end up being not Jewish at all, if that makes any sort of sense. So that is bad news for Jewish people that this sort of thing happens. But the fact that the story is relegated to a Western-like status, yes, yes. And also, it is bad news for the world because the topic becomes trivialized. So that is basically this topic, which I will definitely want to expand on when I get the interview, and we will get that interview. As I've already said, the person has already agreed. It's just that we need to wait for the person to have time. And right now they are like checking 26 or more final university works, papers or something. And now the big slogan of the speech: you need to start early, because if you start late, it is too late. You need to start early because if you start late, it's too late. And this is actually very interesting. This is one of the most okay, I'm gonna stop saying this. All of the parts of the speeches were very interesting. So we go back to Nazi Germany, when the benches were segregated in parks for benches that were for Jewish people and for non-Jewish people. And there was a Jewish person that worked with a certain lady. She knew he was Jewish. And he sat at his favorite bench in the park. And she said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. You must have made a mistake. You sat at the wrong bench. This is your bench." And the woman had not an evil bone in her body. She didn't mean any harm. She didn't hate him. She worked with him. But she simply wanted the law to be obeyed. She was acting like a person that would come to a person and says, "You dropped this." She was trying to be helpful. And if she knew she set in motion the trains to the death camps, she would have been shocked. She would have been even angry about the notion. She would have said, "I don't want to kill anyone." She simply wanted for people to obey the law. Right? And then one of the most powerful sentences in the whole speech. We assume that law is good. We assume that laws are never barbaric. In fact, I have actually many times heard this phrase Law is codified morality. But law can in fact be barbaric. Law can in fact be evil. And if we just blindly find ourselves following law, we end up helping a genocide to happen. Because, and this is very important to remember, not all laws lead to genocide, but all genocides came to be from evil law. All genocides came to be from horrible law. Right? I hear that from conservatives a lot, but phrases a lot more simply. Basically simpler for laws, as if the state defines what's good and bad. Simping, yeah. Whose morality? Exactly. So let me state this again. We assume that law is not barbaric. Law can be barbaric. Not all laws lead to genocide, but all genocide came to be from law that was barbaric, that was evil. And then, basically, I probably skipped a lot, but I skipped a lot. But then, there was a chance to ask the questions, and I asked because it was not part of any topic during the. Unfortunately, it was not a topic during the conference, so I made it a topic for a brief few moments. Hello, Arkyle. So I asked the speaker, I said, I'm trying to remember my question. We discussed a few definitions of genocide, and there are groups, I didn't specify as trans people, I actually broadened the umbrella to the entire LGBT. So I said there are groups such as the LGBT that are not encompassed within the Lemkin legal framework, and still they get ostracized and otherized, they get there is discrimination, and that discrimination can lead to, in my opinion, a genocide. What is your opinion on the subject? Was basically more or less my question. And the speaker's answer was basically that the Lemkin definition itself is problematic because the original definition list included two groups of people apart from all of the groups that are here now. Lemkin also included social and political groups into the groups that could be genocided. Social and political groups. And basically, countries objected, and the UN struck down those two groups from the list in Lemkin's definition. And he said this: when someone advocates for a world without a group, no matter what group, so LGBT, for example, that group is in danger, and the Genocide Convention should offer this group protection. That was the speaker's answer to me asking about the LGBT. So I will repeat it. When someone advocates for a world without a group, so let's say for a world without trans people, that group is in danger, and the genocide convention should offer the group protection. Right? You mean social and political? I mean, so I guess social will be just people who have a certain sexuality, right? That's not exactly a political group. People that happen to be gay, right? I'm not sure if I would classify people that just happen to be gay as a political group, right? So to me, that sort of is. Yeah, but that doesn't make people who are gay sort of. That doesn't mean that gay people are a political group. It does, but it doesn't mean that all social groups are political groups, right? Does that make sense? Like, if someone just decided we need a world without tall people, are tall people a political group? But yes, basically, his answer was whenever someone tries to plan a world without a group, the Genocide Convention should offer that group protection. So, in other words, the Genocide Convention should offer trans people protection. Just because of the sheer planning aspect to imagine a world without the group, and we basically see it around us all the time. And he added, because of course I had the next I'm not sure I understand the question. Any victim of an analog to anti-Semitism? No, it's about when someone advocates for a world without a group, right? It's about advocating for a world without a group. So it does not need to be an analog to anti-Semitism. And then he continues, we cannot risk it happening to anyone. Right? We cannot risk it happening to anyone. We need to expand the definition. Well, actually, the speaker said that he would be very careful about changing the Lemkin's definition. He said we need to expand the definition, and then the convention would need to be modified, and that is risky. I see you mean the difference between a demographic and a political bloc that is normally comprised of multiple. Basically, yeah. Yeah. Oh, and also, there was a question about the Holodomor, because one person raised their hand and say, so in the speech that you gave, why didn't you mention Holodomor? Is there a reason why you didn't mention Holodomor? Do you think that it's not a genocide, the Holodomor? And the speaker answered by saying, well, I have 2 chapters in my book about the Holodomor. Uh, I didn't address the Holodomor now, but he said, because he did answer on whether or not he thinks it's a genocide, he said, Holodomor is an interesting test case because facts of the matter about Holodomor are not up for debate. We know that people were killed, we know that people died, we know, and the main question of the Holodomor is, were people murdered because they were Ukrainian peasants? Stress being put on the word peasants? Or were they murdered because they were Ukrainian peasants? Or were they murdered because they were Ukrainian? And there is a very and I trust this pretty, you know, I let's just say that I trust the historian that specializes literally in genocide when it comes to this argument, okay? He says that all evidence points to people being killed because they were Ukrainian, because Holodomor deniers often say that, but the thing happened in many other places like Kazakhstan and other places, parts of the USSR. And the speaker said, the hunger might have happened on everywhere around the Soviet Union, but only in most of the regions when it started receding, only in Ukrainian regions the deaths went on. Only in the Ukrainian regions the deaths continued, when in other places the deaths started to stop. Even when the deaths receded, it continued on in Ukraine. Right? So it was continued on purpose, even when the sort of the crops were better. All right, so that was basically everything from the first speaker. What do you think? Yes. Yes, they have. Correct. And the next speaker basically said that this sort of genocide is part of Russian colonialism. It's part of Russian colonialism, and that is why the next speaker has said that the current situation in Ukraine is a genocide, but not a genocide in a way that it is a different type of genocide than the Shoah, for example. Because, as the next speaker says, Russia will not set out to kill all 40 million of Ukrainians, right? That is not what Russia is gonna do. It's like Russia is not just going to try to kill every single Ukrainian, all 40 million or more. This reminds me of the British genocide of India, when they didn't necessarily want to literally kill them, but as long as the exploitation continued, they really don't care what passive effects of what they were doing were, right? Right? We can cross out the idea that Russia will attempt to kill 40 million Ukrainian people or more, right? I think we can agree about that, right? Can we agree on that? Right. But what Russia does want to do will be to kill all the elites and also kill something that is much more abstract. Kill the Ukrainian identity. So kill all of the elites and then destroy the identity, the Ukrainian identity. That is the type of genocide that we are talking about in this instance. The type of genocide. Does that make sense? And it's all part of a specific form of Russian colonialism. We will incorporate you into our identity. We will incorporate you into our identity. Which sounds like the Jews too. You don't have the economy to support that kind of organization anyway. Sorry, that sounds costly, but it's really economic. Well, Russia has been proving to be a bit. And in fact, there are some self-conscious Russian thinkers that have asked themselves this question. Doesn't Russia exist? Is Russia just an image of great territory and nothing more? Is Russia just an image of great territory and nothing more? Russian colonialism, eliminating the elites, destroying the history of a nation. This is good education because I believe that vast majority of people have no idea that genocide is such a complicated topic and not realize it's hurting their sense of humanity. Paper tiger, yeah. And there was a topic, and this topic actually sparked a debate between this speaker and the speaker before. It was sort of amusing, but I'm not going to talk about the debate. Russian propaganda. The Russian propaganda, which creates an image of the Ukrainian national movement. Bandera is a symbol. The image is false. The Ukrainian national movement is similar to Polish people during World War I. We Ukrainians have a chance. We were not lucky after World War I. And that they fought on all fronts against Germans, Poles, and Russians. And that Bandera was in a Nazi prison in 1941. Voting was a tragic episode and not the main factor to judge Ukrainians. I understand what the speaker is trying to do, but it sparked a whole debate. So those statements sparked a whole debate. Anti-Ukrainian propaganda. The propaganda is effective. The propaganda is effective because actually many debaters use that whole Bandera argument. I've seen it. I'm sick of it. That's why I said that people should not use it because people just don't know the history at all. And actually this person used a similar argument that people just don't know the history. Interestingly enough, I met this speaker at the coffee table before the speech, And he said, yeah, I'm going to be talking about Ukraine today. And I said, oh, you mean the genocide in Ukraine? And his response to me saying that was like, oh, so you're Ukrainian, you know? Because he sort of assumed that if I saw it as genocide, then I'm probably Ukrainian. And then I sort of said, well, I just think you don't need to be Ukrainian to, to accept it as genocide, what's happening. And then he sort of said, well, for many it isn't, and it all depends on what definition you adopt. I found it really, really interesting that the first sort of reaction that the speaker had when I said, so you're gonna speak about the genocide, was like, oh, so you're Ukrainian. But yeah, he said he sees it as genocide as well, by the way. His position was that it was genocide. I, as an American, see it as a genocide. Well, that's because we're in a, how should I say, based community, you know? But not everyone is. Because as the speaker actually wisely pointed out, anti-Ukrainian propaganda is effective, sadly. We all saw the known smokers of the debate world. And this is very interesting. I find this a very interesting argument that he made. It's just an endless line of people who actually know this subject who agree that it's transgenocide, right? So the argument of Lenin created Ukraine, and this is extremely interesting. The speaker is a journalist. He said, "That's right. Lenin wanted to create Ukraine, the Soviet Ukraine, and actually, the fact that he did create the Soviet Ukraine after, the actual Ukraine was conquered and incorporated into the USSR, speaks to the strength of Ukrainian national identity, because in Lenin's eye, the civil war that he was still waging at the time could not have been won without Ukrainians, without accepting their national identity, which was later an attempt to just squash it, but that is what he said. Yes, sort of, yes, that's true. You're right, Wolfgar. It's a long story. It's a long story. We will get into it one day, but yeah, in my opinion, you're right. And there is this wish to talk about Ukrainian crimes during World War II, but the speaker added, do we ever talk about the Polish crimes towards the Ukrainians? We do not, and we should. And then he also added also a statement that was pretty controversial and became part of the debate. Ukrainian crimes against Jewish people were not worse than Polish ones. Ukrainian crimes against Jewish people were not worse than Polish ones. Honestly, that is a lot of Lucy's content. There's a ton of history, the Polish, Lithuanian, Commonwealth, etc. I do fancy myself a history streamer. All right. Polish. All right. Okay. So that was it when it came to this speaker. This speaker's question time was eaten by the debate between two speakers. So I actually wanted to ask my question, but I was not able to ask it. I never got to ask my question because the debate sort of ate up all of the time. Because the speakers continued to go back and forth in their arguments, and sort of the person that led the whole thing at some point had to say, I'm really sorry, we should stop it here and just move on to the next thing. That was amusing. Oh, thanks a lot for me to learn here. Also, I see you in a lot of lefty space, you're pretty based. That's right. Not only is Somniostatic very based and in a lot of lefty spaces, but also Somniostatic is my editor. Also, for some reason, today I apologize. If I would have known, there is no O berry in here. Oh my god. There is no O berry in here. But yes, thank you for the gifted one tier. Alright. Now, we get to the most interesting thing of the day. You've all been waiting for it. You've all been waiting for it. Hello, Giggler. Hello, Ellen Degenerate. So, the Polish-Belarusian border crisis. Do you know anything about the Polish-Belarusian border crisis? Go back to full screen. So sad. Do you know anything about the Polish-Belarusian border crisis? This topic, and this is a promise, this topic will lead us to the solution of the Loner Box genocide discourse. The current situation, correct? This topic will elegantly lead us to the solution of the Loner Box genocide discourse. This is my promise to you. Belarus is basically a Russian puppet state. Little Russia, right? Do I need to read another Der Stormer article? You want to catch me in a Der Stormer article? No. I actually do promise you that I do have a very elegant solution to this whole Loner Box thing. It has been presented to me during this very speech, and I'm actually frankly embarrassed that I have not thought of it before. And I am pretty confident that you will like it as well. I would be surprised if Loner Box did not sort of take this on board. Okay, so this is where I'm going to start showing photos. So, Polish-Belarusian border. The strong need to see the mechanizations of the Shoah. Right? The strong this speaker explains that there are certain mechanisms to genocides. Mechanisms underlying how those things come to be, and that we have not come to grips with those mechanisms. We have not. And that the various refugee crises around the world and the one on the Polish-Belarusian border have all of those mechanisms in place for a genocide. And I would really love to show you the photos that I've made. But I think I will make a whole different segment about it. A survivor of the Holocaust asked about a refugee crisis. Why do you use such language? Your rhetoric reminds the justification used to kill my family. You can. Wait. I have them on my phone. One moment, okay? The show will go on. Be right back. I'm gonna go get the photos from the thing, because they did not allow me to record, but they did allow me to take photos. Be right back. I don't actually have to show you the photos. I can just read what's in them. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, it is. It is sort of like the lamp from back here. All right. We continue. Okay, the mechanisms. So, we are speaking of the prelude to no man's land, pushbacks and camps, forests. The racialized discourse, disease, and sexual deviance. Tell me if any of these things sound familiar. Language of torturers, humor. Language of the rescuers. Linguistic after images of the Shoah. Specific it is not a simple similarity to the Shoah, the Holocaust. There is an underlying mechanism from the 30s and 40s that is present right now. And I will read you from the slide right now, okay? Because it is important that we do. A ship on water, Lenko. A refugee conference has been meeting abroad for several weeks, but for the time being, no one is letting these people in. The gates of all countries are tightly closed. Wild. So where are they settling them? They are wandering in the frontier zones, in the so-called no man's land, in forests, caves, on ships, on the seas. They wander from harbor to harbor, looking for a new homeland and justice. Sorry? Oh yeah, that's right. You can put the screenshots that I will talk about in the post. That's great thinking. So basically, the idea of no man's land is an idea of a land between borders of countries that technically speaking belong to nobody. And this is the crux of the Polish-Belarusian border crisis. Afghani refugees are trapped in a little piece of land between the Belarusian and the Polish border, and they are basically sentenced to die because volunteers were not let in, people were not allowed to bring food or drinks, medics were not allowed to move in. It's an ongoing, very horrible situation. And the obvious comparison, the obvious similarity is that of the Jewish people who were themselves refugees and tried to escape to different countries and were refused. They were simply refused, which basically also sentenced them to death in the Shoah. Right? It is very important to remember. And we continue to the next slide. "10,000 wandering Jews without visas and without money are hunted today like animals along the corridors of no man's land and no man's sea. There is not a country in the world in which they have not sought a crevice within which to creep." There's some pretty powerful words. The largest of the no man's lands, however, was created on the German-Polish frontier when Jews of Polish origin residing in Germany were rounded up on the night of October 28th, taken across the border, and left to their fate. And there is the slide showing the Usenars, which is a terrain that is forbidden from entry. It is the slide that will be shown in the proper segment. And then there is a slide that shows Zboche in 1938, Usnash 2021, and it says the borders of humanity. And it says that basically the situation is the same then and now. Wędrzyn detention centers. One of the Some of the system are the detention centers. It is. It is a Monster energy drink. I will drink it now. Thank you. So, those who are lucky enough to get into the country are locked within a detention center. A detention center. And I think I have a great quote about the detention centers. There you go. Internment camps. The internment camps are the only country for the stateless. The internment camps are the only country for the stateless. Wędrzyń, the detention center. The space standard for accommodation of foreigners in detention centers being 2 meters, 2 square meters per person is unacceptable. It is even lower than that. The standard per 1 inmate in penitentiary units in Poland. It is 3 square meters. The European standard is 4 square meters. So basically the detention centers have less space for refugees than a prison cell. Despite the repeated recommendation from the first visit to remove the razor wire developed on the inside of the walkways, nothing has changed. The choice of any army barracks located on the grounds of an active military training ground as a center for foreigners grossly violates the rights of migrants. Commissioner for Human Rights consultations after the third visit in January 2022. And then we have the forests, in which Jewish people also used to hide. Oh, and of course I have to read this quote from, you will see from who. Same shame, same disgrace. Organized by anarchist groups in Poznań. Same shame, same disgrace. For Jewish people, after a while, forests were the only place where they felt safe. Currently for migrants, the forests are just a source of fear. Yes. So we continue our conversation. The racialized discourse. The leper was caught up in the practice of rejection of exile, enclosure. He was left to his doom in a mass among which it was useless to differentiate. The image of the leper cut off from all human contact underlies projects of exclusion. So basically, the refugees are often painted as disease-driven and as people that just spread disease. The radicalized discourse, disease. And this is the comparison to Shoah. All sorts of parasites, protozoa that are not dangerous in the bodies of these people can be dangerous. Recently, however, there have been incidents of typhus outside the Jewish quarters caused by wandering Jews. In the interest of the entire population of the Warsaw district, I have therefore forbidden to provide support to a Jew who is outside one of the Jewish districts. And then you have the Polish politician's quote above. All sorts of parasites, protozoa that are not dangerous in the bodies of these people can be dangerous here. The radicalized discourse, sexual deviance. We see the emergence of a figure basically unknown to earlier periods, the sexual monster, the monstrous individual, and the sexual deviant link up. And this is a quote from the Minister of Interior press conference September 27th, 2021 in Poland. Our intelligence has also identified photographs indicating practices related to sexual disorders. We took the decision to document this theme on our presentation, and they showed it on TV. They showed it in the news. And now, the comparison to how Jews were treated, the Jewish people. Separating ourselves from this nation in order to protect ourselves from its evil influences is all the more necessary because Christ the Lord said about it that it was an evil and adulterous nation. According to the Tacitus, it was a most lustful nation, avoiding strangers but not considering anything forbidden among its own. This is fully confirmed by the Talmud, which presents exuberant sensuality in the form of descriptions, stories, and examples. And now we go to the language of... I'm going to go back for a second. The language of the torturers, humor, which is another slide. From a reader, there was a person that tried to go past the border wall, which was built in Poland. It has a barbed wire, and the person could not cross the wall because they got caught in the barbed wire and hanged upside down, caught by the barbed wire. And somebody thought it was funny. One of the border guards took a photo and said, from a reader, a bat from Podlachia, because they said it's funny that the person is hanging upside down like a bat. The language of tortures, the humor. And then it is compared to the humor of the Nazi SS soldiers. Richard Grunberger, The 12-Year Reich, A Social History of Nazi Germany, 1933-1945. At Dachau, the guards called the party of prisoners who had to remove sewage from the open latrine Squad 4711 after the coup de Cologne. At Mauthausen, Jews about to be pushed over the edge of the quarry precipice were called paratroopers. At Auschwitz, prisoners employed in the extraction of two fillings from the mouths of gassed corpses were referred to as the gold diggers of Alaska. So once again, the language of the torturers, the humor. And now we end this very sad talk about the refugee crisis on a positive note. A positive note and the lesson of the Shoah. The lesson of the Shoah and the language of the rescuers. The language of the rescuers, which becomes the after image of the Shoah. And I will explain what I mean by this. So, when it comes to the Polish-Belarusian refugee crisis, very often activists and people who live in the vicinity of the border activize themselves to help the people. They go to the forests and they help them to get safe passage through the forest and swamps to go to the Western countries. They give them warm food, cigarettes, and anything that they need, and they give them help. And those people very consciously use the language that is used in Poland very specifically in the context of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. They use words such as wywózki, deportations. In English you have the word deportation, but in Polish you have a very specific word, wywózka, wywózki. It refers to people being driven to the camps, quite literally. It is used mostly within the context of people being driven to the camps. And this is basically how the treatment of the refugees is being called wywózki, deportation. The second word that is very specific to the Holocaust, denouncers and blackmailers, szmalcownicy. It was the word used for the people that sold Jewish people out during the Holocaust and blackmailed Jewish people to get anything from them. And in this case, szmalcownicy, denouncers and blackmailers, is the term that is used for people that basically tell on refugees to the border guards. And finally, dobry wygląd. It's also Holocaust related. Yes, opportunists. Dobry wygląd, good appearance. Good appearance is also a Holocaust related term. And as the speaker has said, considering the nature of the situation, the refugees in the Polish-Belarusian border, in the eyes of the oppressive government, never have the good appearance because racism, right? And he added that some people actually desperately try to have the good appearance by dyeing their hair blonde and other such homemade attempts at having good appearance. That's right. And there is an important book called Jesus Died in Poland. It is about a new book about the refugee that died on the Polish-Belarusian border, whose name basically translated to Jesus. Jesus died in Poland. And the book says, I wouldn't be surprised if in 50, 70 years, some Catholic nationalist wants to erect monuments to Poles who, just as during the Holocaust, rescued people here. I know it can be compared, but my point is that the narrative will change and stories will flourish about how the people of Podlasie hid people en masse and helped them get to safety, to their families in the West. You'll see. They'll want to put up a monument in Michałów to a Polish woman rescuing forest children. So yes, on this bitter note, we sort of end this story. But I have promised you the solution to I have promised you a loaner box solution, right? Because you may recall what Loanerbox asked me during our talk. Loanerbox asked me if I would call all sorts of refugee crises all over the world genocide. Do you recall that? Have all of you watched my conversation with Loanerbox? Do you remember that? He asked me that specifically. Okay. So yes, he did ask me that. Loanerbox is a content creator. So the answer is yes then. Not quite. It actually is not yes. The answer is actually not yes. The answer is, and I have never heard this phrase used before, the answer is, because I asked this question directly to the speaker. A similar version of Loanerbox's question I asked the speaker, and his answer was, all the mechanisms are in place. All the mechanisms are in place. It is sort of happening, but it is not quite a genocide yet. There is nothing stopping it from becoming a genocide, but it is not quite a genocide yet. The whole underlying machinery within the system that we observe within the refugee crisis does nothing to stop it from becoming a genocide. And what it is a proto-genocide. It is a proto-genocide. You see? A proto-genocide, which is the thing, but not quite the thing yet. A proto-genocide, which is a term that I have not heard before. I have not heard the term proto-genocide used before. Proto-genocide is a thing that has all the symptoms of a possible genocide, but it does not have to become a genocide. at the stage of the proto-genocide, you can still stop it, right? And when it becomes, then it is already too late. I think this distinction is very, very interesting because it actually answers all of the question, because not all of proto-genocides become full-blown genocides, right? We can stop it before that happens. And I genuinely think that, yes, cancer that hasn't metastasized. And I genuinely think loner bugs should not have a problem with this. Yes, and proto-genocide still gets across what it could be. Yes, exactly. And considering how Lonerbox talked about the subject, I don't think he would have an objection against using the term proto-genocide. Like, I even went as far because after the speaker ended, we all went to lunch because there was a lunch break, and I actually followed the person to lunch to talk to him some more. And I said, let's take the benches example. Let's take the benches example of Nazi Germany, when the benches were segregated for Jewish people and German people. Would that be, for example, a proto-genocide? And he, of course, said yes, that would be an example of a proto-genocide. And then I asked if then he would say that the refugee crisis is a proto-genocide, and so he said yes. And in the case, because you could tell that he was extremely passionate about the topic, he said, yes, it is a proto-genocide, but I am very, very afraid of what will happen when the volumes of the refugees will start increasing, which, I'm just going to say it now, the volumes of refugees will just inevitably increase. So that's another bit of a sad note. Because if things are bad now, then they will become worse, I'm afraid. As more and more places are becoming basically uninhabitable for people to live. Yeah, that's right, Palm Dad. That's right. I read an estimation that in not super long future, every 10th person in Poland will be a foreigner. Every 10th person. Well, there won't be a foreigner at that point. In my mind, there will just be people who came to Poland from the outside, but once a person lives in a country, they're no longer a foreigner, in my opinion. So that's a whole other topic. But yes, have you enjoyed my little recap from the conference? What do you think? How did you like? Okay, I will also... The speaker also said an amazing quote, which is, "We did not finish the job of understanding how these atrocities happen." This is a very interesting quote that I like. We did not finish the job of understanding how these atrocities happen, as in the underlying mechanisms of the atrocities. I will do more because tomorrow it continues. I will take more notes, hopefully better notes. And of course, my favorite book author said, it is good to grapple with the genocide problem. It is good that it is a problem because it means that we do not treat it as normal. It is impossible for genocide to happen and then for everyone to go back to business as usual, which is a good thing. There's actually more speakers that I could talk about. But I think I'll leave it for tomorrow. The most heated speaker of them all, who just basically started talking about Poland not having democracy and how the Polish government is evil. But what can I say? I don't see I don't see no lies in what the person is saying, so no lies, I'm afraid. He also said, and that's actually that was the most tense speaker. That was the most tense speaker because he said, at the start of his speech, he literally said that he actually cannot guarantee the safety of his audiences whenever he speaks anymore. He literally said, I just want to say at the start of this speech, I can no longer guarantee the safety of my audiences wherever I go. Because apparently, when he went to speak about the growing genocide problem in some place, the place was basically, I don't know how to call it. The place was surrounded by right-wing nationals, and they went in and they broke the microphone. Jesus. So yeah. But no, nothing happened today. But yeah. I'm gonna have a meeting with the person on Friday, by the way. And because there's a small meeting every Friday that just happens and we discuss Jewish topics. And my uncle attends those meetings, and he basically scared my uncle also by saying that he no longer can guarantee the safety of the meeting or whatever. And my uncle just said like, I think we can handle it. Which is funny. But yeah, basically. Also, the person is a professional historian, just so you know. The person is a professional historian, which is always nice. Which maybe I'll just get an interview with him as well. That would be also awesome, wouldn't it? If we could get he would explain to you what a neo-historian is. So basically a historian that is a lackey of the government or something, that is just does the narrative. Which also is not a lie, sadly. It was a very packed day. It was a jam-packed day. It was like a rapid fire of basically lectures. Of course, as I've joked sarcastically, the only difference between university lectures and today is that at university you actually can get transcripts from the lectures. And here, no dice. Usually lecturers just offer transcripts from their lectures. Worst case scenario, lectures usually just allow to be recorded. And here, no recording nor transcript, so I had to take notes. Yeah, yeah. And interestingly enough, the organizers of the conference will not create a recording of their own and forbade recording it. So you either were there live or it's gone, or you will never know unless you're here on this stream, in which case I'm telling you what was on the conference from my notes. Basically, yeah, basically that's one of the only sources. Need to learn more shorthand. Yeah, I need to learn shorthand, that's true. Should practice it before tomorrow. I wonder if that makes it more intimate. I don't know, I'm putting my conspiracy hat on, and I'm sort of starting to think it was before some of the unacceptable by government standards things that were being said. You know? There was a lot of talk of Polish people not really taking ownership of the Holocaust. I think so. That's my opinion. And I perfectly understand it, to be honest. But yeah, I've taken notes and we've discussed it, so perfect. Like there were a lot of things. I did hack the system with my, and of course don't forget that we might get conversation with the speakers themselves. We will get conversations with the speakers themselves. It is now 2:25 a.m. and I'm just gonna say that the thing will begin at 10 a.m. tomorrow, so in a little bit over 8 hours from now. So my question is, this has been a pretty intense thing. Do we play some Final Fantasy 16 or should I go to sleep? I will let the audience decide on that one. I will let the audience decide my fate. FF 16 or sleep. Well, no, because I would be awake playing Final Fantasy. That is true. Oh, I'm gonna tell you what tomorrow is. I have the program here. I have the whole program here, so I can tell you what tomorrow is gonna be about. Wednesday, 28th June, 2023. 10 to 12, Session 3, Anti-Semitism After the Shoah. Online and Offline Anti-Jewish Hatred by Gunther G. Kelly, Associate Professor, Institute for the Study of Contemporary Antisemitism, Indiana University, Bloomington. Indiana University. We're going to have a speaker from Indiana University. Second speech will be Anti-Semitism as a Response to Assimilation. Agata Bielik Robson, Professor of Jewish Studies, University of Nottingham, Great Britain, Institute of Philosophy and Sociology of the Polish Academy of Sciences, Warsaw. Oh, nice. You could potentially meet this person when they are back. Dialectics of Center and Periphery. Relations between symbolic power and the extreme right wing in Poland. Katarzyna Chmielewska, PhD, Institute of Literary Research of the Polish Academy of Sciences, Warsaw. And then from 12 to 13, closing the conference. From 13 to 14, so from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. lunch break, which I will take advantage of because there's a lot of good food on the lunch break. As I've managed to learn today, I've actually ate a lot on the lunch break. 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. our guests are invited to visit the Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews. So I assume that all of the exhibitions will be free. On the 27th, 28th June, an exhibition entitled Humanitarian Association Brotherhood, World of Polish B'nai Brit, prepared by the Professor Moses Shore Foundation, will be presented at the venue. Which I did take photos of that. So, yes. I can record in the museum actually. I actually have recordings of the museum, but yes, I can actually record in the museum. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed the stream. I hope you have enjoyed this discussion of genocide. And I hope we can make a short segment of the finding a solution to the genocide discourse with Lonerbox. We might actually, Lonerbox said that I could call in anytime, so we could call in and put the discourse to rest. So do you all feel that I managed to keep my promise and to solve the discourse? Do you think that this solution that I'm proposing will work? Have I kept my promise? I guess that's my biggest answer. Have I kept my promise to you all? It's true. I hope I kept it because until Lonerbox himself says it, I haven't kept any promise, but we'll see. I'm positive. It is a good answer to the problem. Yeah. So if you like what I do, if you like my gaming segments, my history segments, my language segments, my reaction segments, which we were supposed to do today, but we haven't, we'll do tomorrow, then he kind of said as much in a way. Yeah, I think we sort of were lacking the word. Which again, I'm a bit embarrassed that I never thought of the word proto-genocide, but hey, live and learn. So, yes, please consider subscribing, liking, giving a donation. If you go to my page, which I will link in YouTube right now, if you go to this page, and decide to donate or subscribe, then if you do it through the page, the big bonus is that it all goes to me and nothing goes to any other page or middle company. 100% of it goes to me then. Jeffrey Bezos, yes. Also, first time catching a stream. It was nice. Looking forward to tomorrow. Thank you very much, John Toms. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I'll be seeing you tomorrow. We'll actually do the more intense speech tomorrow as well. I'm not sure if the audience will be interested in this speech about the compromise between the Christian church and Jewish people. There were some interesting quotes in there, so I might read them out, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go through the whole relationship between the Christian church and Jewish people speech. That might be a bit. We'll see. If there's interest, that I will discuss it, but I'm not 100% confident there will be. All right. And then we shall end for today. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for listening to my clumsy attempt at doing a quick summary of the conference. I will see you all tomorrow after day 2, and I will take notes, and we will probably have a lot of interesting new topics to talk about. Well, we have not talked about all the topics from today, but we will have more tomorrow. And we will react to a couple's video probably. So good night. Thank you very, very much. And I'm gonna end on the same thing that I always end up on, meaning love and solidarity. Love and solidarity. Okay, and then here. Love and okay, and now I can press end stream.